Hello and welcome to our presentation on Child Rights Impact Assessment, a tool for rebuilding a digital world for children to thrive. I'm Sonia Livingstone. I'm a professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science and lead researcher at the Digital Futures Commission together with the Five Rights Foundation.
Welcome from me too. I am Kruakae, Pothong. I work with Sonia on the Digital Futures Commission. The work that underpins this presentation today brings together our insights from our research on play in the digital world and beneficial uses of education data. The aim here is to translate these insights into practical steps to help digital innovators embed children's rights in their products and services by design. In this presentation, we will focus on child rights impact assessment as a tool for fulfilling children's rights.
So, why children? And what do children have to do with the digital environment? A lot, of course. And they start from a very young age as well. Children engage with a diverse range of digital products and services for lots of different purposes, ranging from video on demand viewing, social interactions with friends, playing online games and learning, and we've seen that especially during the COVID-19 lockdown. So now that children's lives intersect substantially with digital technologies and their communication, learning, health, social relations and identities are now all underpinned by digitally mediated activities and organisations, we're witnessing urgent calls for their rights to be respected, protected and fulfilled in a digital world. And this matters both when they engage with products and services that are targeted at them as children, sometimes even designed for them as children, but it also matters when they engage with products not necessarily intended for them, even products produced by businesses who say they can't even tell if children are among their users.
Another factor driving these calls for children's rights to be respected, protected, and fulfilled in the digital environment relate to the bad press that we see about digital technologies that children use. These reports range from online harms such as abuse and harassment to commercial exploitation of information processed from children when they interact with digital products and services, even as part of their learning, without clear evidence for benefits, all the way down to attacks on schools. All of these incidents show that today's digital products and services really have not been built with children's best interests in mind. Until recently, digital providers could muster the defense that they cannot identify the age of their users and so cannot distinguish children from adults, nor know the circumstances of their users' lives. So how could they possibly respect the rights of any but a generic user or typical audience in developing their products and services? Today's pervasive data collection that harvests multiple aspects of users' interaction with digital services, along with their search and browsing histories, and other contextual data, combined with increasingly powerful computing techniques, is radically changing organizations' actual and potential knowledge of their users. So, digital providers do generally know who their users are and that most of these generic users are actually children. Now then, the question that digital providers should be asking is, how do we design for children's rights? We do have an answer for that question. That is basically conduct child rights impact assessment as part of your product and service development. So like any impact assessment, child rights impact assessment is a tool commonly used in management to anticipate outcomes of policy or business decisions, particularly to take the preventive measures to mitigate harms that would otherwise be difficult or problematic if left too late. Given the organization's familiarity with the concept of impact assessment, it makes sense that human rights organizations advocate the human rights impact assessment as an instrument for examining policies, legislations, programs, and projects to identify and measure the effects on human rights. So child rights are a child-focused version of human rights, recognizing children's special and diverse needs. Typically, child rights impact assessment follows an 8-step process, as you can see on the screen here.
So why do children and their rights matter in the digital environment? Children are entitled to, quote, special care and assistance, and that applies wherever they go across the physical and the digital environment. And the more that states and businesses integrate technologies into their operation, the more they must consider children's rights in relation to the digital environment. And this has been argued in the recent UN Committee on the Rights of the Child's General Comment 25. It's also been argued that realising children's rights in the digital environment for businesses is absolutely crucial as part of the UN Guiding Principles on Human Rights and Business. At a regional level, the Council of Europe has recently called for the use of child rights impact assessment in its recommendation and its handbook for policymakers on the rights of the child in the digital environment, arguing that businesses should do child rights impact assessment both before and after their digital products and services reach children, whether or not they are deliberately intended for children, as part of child rights due diligence. European Network of Ombudspersons for Children produced a template to enable both states and businesses to conduct child rights impact assessment and to ensure children's voices are included in public decision making. And there's a number of other examples of how child rights impact assessment is being used in relation to digital technologies. When it comes to deploying child rights impact assessment in practice, there's still a way to go in terms of making this a fluid and effective process. I'd point here to the example of the EU Consent Project, European Commission funded project, which has been building child rights into its own principles and practices to develop and trial an infrastructure for age verification or age assurance and parental consent in the online domain. So this project was designed to meet the challenge that if we're going to address children's rights in relation to digital products and services, the provider needs a mechanism that can identify a child, and often a child by age or age band, but without infringing their privacy and other rights. EU consent is one example of an ongoing project that is seeking to do this, building in consideration of child rights both in anticipation of the development of the service and also in evaluating its results. And while it's not always straightforward and may not be fully successful, it's significant, I think, that the project followed the 8 steps of the CREA process, bringing a child rights lens to the work of technologists, engineers and regulation experts.
And at the national level, we have the UK's Age Appropriate Design Code, or the Children's Code. This is a statutory code of practice introduced by the UK Information Commissioner's Office. So relevant to child rights impact assessment is the Principle 2 of the code, which requires businesses in scope to conduct data protection impact assessment. Though child right impact assessment is not explicitly mentioned, the criteria for data impact assessment do focus businesses' attention on their impact on children's rights and freedom.
On this somewhat complicated slide, we've tried to track the growth and diffusion of child rights impact assessment as a tool, both internationally through the steps of its development and promotion, and also on the right-hand side of the screen in relation particularly to deployment in the UK. What we might say in summary about the gradually increasing use of child rights impact assessment is that it tends to be led by the UN agencies, especially UNICEF. It's being used more often by some governments than others, notably in Europe. But a challenge is that in almost nowhere is child rights impact assessment mandated by national legislation, and that undermines the consistency of its implementation and its benefits. And where it does get used, it tends to be more focused on mitigating risk. Our desk research and interviews with child rights experts suggests that when it comes to digital technologies, translating children's rights into practice is likely to be especially uphill battle, partly because of the challenges of digital providers understanding a child rights framework, and partly because of the wider lack of implementation of child rights internationally. But we, in our paper, try to set out the benefits for using child rights impact assessment as a tool and the ways in which it can mitigate some of the problems of not building in such attention. This is our last slide, and here we show how we are translating children's rights into a series of design principles that can be promoted through use of child rights impact assessments, and that will, taken together, practically deliver child rights by design. Thank you so much for your attention today.